Right. So this is Melissa Cribbins, County Commissioner candidate for County Commissioner Position 3. Is that right?
That's correct.
And we'd like you to start by just giving us a brief introduction as to why you are running for this position and what your qualifications are for being County Commissioner.
Great. Thank you so much, Judge, and thank you to League of Women Voters for putting this together. I do appreciate your guys' continued efforts at voter participation and making sure the voters are informed. I'm Melissa Cribbins, and it has been my honor to be your Coos County Commissioner. I actually grew up in Coquille, right across from the courthouse for most of my childhood. I never thought that I would be a county commissioner someday. I graduated from Coquille High School and went away to college and eventually to law school. I returned back to this area to raise my family and to take care of my father. After we moved back, I really found that I wanted to give back to this place. I have a really strong track record of standing up for Coos County, both in Salem and in Washington, D.C. And this has actually given me the opportunity to testify in front of both the state legislature and congressional committees. So as your county commissioner, I feel that I've accomplished a lot in the last 10 years. We built a new health and wellness building at no raised taxes for the taxpayer and no bonds. Obtained grants to create the Whiskey Run mountain biking trails, a 30-mile expanse of trails that attracts visitors from across the nation. If you ever get a chance to swing by there, the license plate array is impressive. And have consolidated and changed county departments in order to save tax dollars and allow the county to give better service to our citizens. I'm running for county commissioner because while I've accomplished a lot in the last 10 years, I feel there's still a lot to do. My top 3 priorities for the next 4 years are housing, economic development and recovery, and increasing access to healthcare. Briefly, I want you to know that I've already started this work. I'm not waiting for another term to get started on those things. Coos and Curry counties received a coordinated grant for a housing coordinator to help coordinate the work because we know that many people live in Curry County and work in Coos or vice versa. And we really need to coordinate our housing efforts across the region. Economic development and recovery is an ongoing effort. I currently serve on several boards and organizations that work on business and workforce development for our area. And then access to healthcare is a special issue to me because growing up, I never had access to healthcare or a family doctor. My dad was a veterinarian and believed that there wasn't anything wrong with me that he couldn't treat. Many people don't even have a veterinarian to take care of them, though, and it's hard to get into a doctor when you're new to the area. I'm committed to making sure we increase access to healthcare by attracting and retaining physicians so our citizens can access quality healthcare without having to move outside the area. Thank you again for the opportunity to earn your vote again. And again, thanks for the opportunity to talk to voters in this strange time where we're all transitioning back to being together.
What are the primary responsibilities of a county commissioner?
I bet that varies depending on which county commissioner you talk to. It's interesting because talking to colleagues across the state, and I had the opportunity to serve as the president of the Association of Oregon Counties last year, and every county is different. The primary responsibility of a Coos County commissioner, as far as I'm concerned, is to be a good steward of the budget and the tax dollars that we receive. Property tax dollars are a very small part of our budget. Our total budget is about $110 million any given year. And property taxes are about $5.5 million of that budget. The county commissioners oversee the budget process. We put the budget together, frankly, because in Coos County, we don't have a county administrator. And so we work directly with the departments to put that budget together. And then we make sure that the budget is adhered to throughout the year. And if there are unforeseen issues that come up, which all of us know that unforeseen issues do come up, even in your home budget, the car breaks down, the refrigerator starts leaking, you have to figure out a way to take care of it. We're the ones that figure out the way to take care of it. In addition to that, we have direct reports. I have, I believe, 10 direct reports, departments that I oversee, and if they have concerns, I serve as their liaison. All the commissioners have direct reports. And then there's always those little weird jobs that we have that nobody really realizes. Like we serve as the dog board. So if a dog is running at large and injures livestock, we have a hearing on that. We have land use authority. So we serve in a quasi-judicial role in that, meaning if you apply to get a new permit for your property, to build a garage or whatever, we act in a quasi-judicial capacity. So we talk to you about your garage in a public meeting, but we don't talk to your neighbor about it when we run into them in the grocery store. So it's a wide variety of responsibilities being a county commissioner. A lot of people would like to make it a very partisan role. There's an old saying that there's no politics in a pothole. And I've found that's very much true. You know, when you call your county commissioner, you don't necessarily want to hear my opinion on state or federal issues. You want me to figure out a way to get your pothole fixed, or to get your cousin in for mental health treatment, or just to help you navigate the system. And that's really what we do.
What 3 issues facing the county would be your highest priority to address, and how would you go about it?
Well, thank you for that question. As I mentioned in my opening statement, my 3 highest priorities are housing, access to healthcare, and economic development and recovery. Housing, you know, those issues are big umbrella issues that, frankly, if we can solve any one of them, it helps to solve the other issues. When we talk about housing, when we try to attract people to our area, take physicians, for example, if they come down here and there's no housing available, they're not likely to move their family here. So it's a challenge for attracting and retaining physicians. It's also a challenge for any industry that we try to bring in or try to grow. If people can't find a place for their employees to live, then they are not likely to stay in or expand in our region. So we really have to resolve that issue. Also, you can't have a complete community if people can't live in the places where they work. So just for quality of life issues, it's important that people are able to find safe and reasonably priced housing. Housing shouldn't cost you half of your monthly wage. Housing shouldn't cost you any more than a third of your monthly wage. And even most of us would be strapped at that. So I really worked on the housing issue, continuing to work on the housing issue. We've developed some innovative partnerships, such as, many people remember when the Englewood School burned down about 7 years ago. The owner left without cleaning it up. Coos County took the property back in tax foreclosure, but there was a lot of contamination. We entered into an agreement with the city of Coos Bay to clean up that property. And now that the property is cleaned up, it will actually be turned over to a nonprofit organization to build low-income housing on that site. To me, that's how we solve the housing problem in our area. It's not by building giant subdivisions. It's not by building giant apartment complexes like you might see in Portland or Eugene. It's by identifying these little sections of land where we can build 4 or 5, multifamily housing units and building them. And that's really the effort that I've been engaged in. We also recently, the state legislature had a bill in front of them to create, at the beginning it was 5, in the end it was 8 regions where the state would fund efforts to create a homeless plan. And Coos Bay, North Bend, and Coos County joined together to lobby to become one of those areas. And we did. We have not received the final contract yet, but it has been approved by the governor. And so we will receive $1 million to do a coordinated homeless response. And as part of that, we are going to do a plan for the whole county. It will include all of the cities. It'll include all of the nonprofits and the stakeholders. I think that's important work. Of course, economic development is a continually evolving goal. And through COVID, I worked really hard to make sure that businesses were able to stay in business by us reaching out and getting grants whenever possible from the state to pass through to businesses. And then as far as access to healthcare, I have worked for years on the board of Advanced Health, and now as the equity partner representative and on the Community Advisory Council to work towards attracting and retaining physicians and medical care in our area. Thank you.
What role should the county commissioners play in developing new industries and businesses in the county? Is this an active or a passive role for the county commissioner?
It's an interesting question. I think a lot of people differ on that. To me, our role has always been to serve as a facilitator or as a liaison. We are meant to provide an opportunity. Offshore wind is a great example, right? Because that's the newest industry I think that we're talking about. It's not the commissioner's job to decide whether or not that's financially feasible, but it is our job to answer questions from our citizens and from developers that are interested in coming to the area. It's our job to collect those questions, to ask state agencies, to ask federal agencies, to get the answers that our citizens want, and then to, just make sure that our concerns of our citizens are heard. For example, I know the fisheries community is very concerned about offshore wind. Taken separately, they have a hard time getting their voice heard. But as a group and as commissioners, it's our role to make sure that those voices are elevated to the point where they're getting the answers that they need. We don't want to displace existing industries in order to bring in new ones. Also, I think we have a responsibility to do a very thoughtful analysis of policy and of potential impacts of industry coming in.
What can the county do to help with the unhoused population with issues such as shelter and physical and mental illness?
I think the county's role is dual in that one. As we know, the homeless or unhoused population, I hear both ways that people prefer to refer to it. They are not a homogeneous population, right? I had an uncle that was chronically homeless throughout his adult life. And I don't know that there's anything you could have done to change that for him, because that was his choice. At that point in my life, he had decided that he had no interest in having rules applied to him. There are many other people who experience a setback in their life and become unhoused for no choice of their own, right? They would like nothing more than to get back into stable housing. That's another percentage of the population. And then another percentage is just really struggling with addiction or with mental illness, or in many cases, both. And they need help addressing that in addition to addressing housing. So I think that's the biggest challenge that people have right off the bat is that we want to just say, this definition need this. And really, it's a case-by-case basis. The county's role is dual. I feel like we really need to help with the housing side of it. And for a certain percentage of our population, just getting more low-income and workforce housing will resolve that issue. Because we know right now, even if you're in low-income housing right now, there's no workforce housing for you to move into. So we've got a pinch point there, because we cannot necessarily move somebody from a $800 a month apartment into a $2,500 a month mortgage and have them be able to be successful. So we have to have that missing part of our housing spectrum, which tends to be a lot of workforce housing in our area. The other part of that is, in addition to that, for people that do need help with addiction or help with mental health, we need more case managed or case supported housing. We have some of it, we don't have nearly enough. And that's where a big part of what I also see as the county's role is that, because that's something that we typically fund through Coos Health and Wellness. And that's where we also provide mental health treatment. And frankly, there's never enough. People have to wait too long. You should be able to call. If you're in crisis, you should be able to get in right away, right? Because if I'm in crisis, I don't need to hear that I can get an appointment in 3 weeks. I need to get in to see somebody right away. I would like to say that's just a Coos County problem, but frankly, from what I've seen and from talking to other commissioners, that's a nationwide problem. We don't have enough providers to provide the treatment and care that people need. And we need to figure out a way to make it more attractive for people to go into the mental health field and pay off their student loans. So no easy answers on the unhoused population, but I am really, really hopeful that this money and this investment of commitment that Coos Bay, North Bend, and the county are making, because we've committed to a 5-year plan to figure out how to address some of our issues. And we will leverage this funding from the state to get additional grants from other nonprofits as we have our plan and our studies. And I'm really hopeful that that will make a difference, because we owe it to our citizens and to our unhoused population to figure out how we're going to address those issues and improve quality of life for everyone.
We're going to really change the topic now. The
Sure.
present Coos Bay Estuary Management Plan was approved in 1984 and is in need of revision. What will you do to ensure the process that began several years ago will continue and will include all available data from efforts begun under the Partnership for Coastal Watershed Steering Committee and the Coos County Planning Director, tribal, and other local partners?
This is a topic that actually was one of the first things I worked on as a commissioner. And as a lawyer, I never worked on planning issues at all. And so it kind of took me outside of my comfort zone. But I was approached by Don Ivey and Craig Cornu, I believe, about supporting this work. And I think what people miss is how many volunteer hours have gone into updating all of those studies and putting it all together. So we're in a position where we can update the Coos Bay Estuary Management Plan. And I think it's absolutely critical that we get that done. I'm actually the liaison to the planning department, and our planning director knows I'm very supportive of that work. You know, it's an impediment to doing any economic development or any cultural resource protection at this time. We really have to update that. If people don't realize that, I'm always surprised at how long it's been since we created the Estuary Management Plan. But we really must get it updated. I feel like we've made good progress. There's never enough funding. And unfortunately, the planning department has been, unfortunately, the planning department has been very, very busy. But the commissioners have committed recently to adding another staff person in the county planning department, which I think will help with that. It's somebody to work on a lot of exactly that kind of work, not applications, not taking phone calls, but working on the legislative and the policy side of what we do in the planning department. And so I think between that and engaging stakeholders, we are continuing to do what we can to move this process forward. And I'm actually hopeful that it will get done soon.
With creation of the Elliott State Research Forest by the Oregon Legislature in the recent short session, Oregon State University is now designated to manage the forest and lead its research program in fulfilling the interests agreed upon by the various stakeholders who helped shape a new future for the Elliott. What is your view of the solution arrived at by the legislature?
So I admit I am biased on this one because I actually served on that committee that put the legislation together. And I think it is the best possible outcome that we could hope for. There are times in your life when you are surprised to see people of varying parties come together for very different reasons. And to me, the Elliott State Forest was one of those. And I tell people all the time that in Coos County, a lot of times you can figure out how people are voting by bumper sticker. But those green bumper stickers that said Save the Elliott State Forest were everywhere. And everyone wanted to save the Elliott State Forest, and everyone had different reasons for it, but they all wanted the same outcome. They wanted the Elliott to stay in public ownership. And so when I was asked to serve on the committee for the Elliott State Research Forest, I felt like that was a good use of county time. I think about that a lot when I'm asked to serve on something, does this serve our citizens? So I thought it was a good use of county time. And it was such a large, there were 16 people on it from across the spectrum, though. The political ideologies were all over the place. We had conservationists, environmentalists, timber industry, county. I'm trying to think of who I'm missing. Oregon State was obviously at the table. And, we worked through it. We developed those relationships. We didn't always agree. I went on record at one point about one proposal and said, I just want to say that this is stupid. Just for the record, write me down, this is stupid. But it's still done very respectfully. And that was a discussion about having designated seats on the final board that will represent the Elliott, because I don't believe in designated seats. I believe in selecting the best people for whatever entity you're creating. And nobody wants to believe that they're only there because they're that one designated seat. Melissa's on there because she's the county commissioner seat. I don't want to be there for that reason. I want to be there because I have an important voice that you want to hear. The glorious part to me about this solution to the Elliott is, number one, that it completely decouples the Common School Fund and makes the Common School Fund whole according to the most recent appraisal that will be done. The other thing is that, I testified in front of the legislature on this one, that it really exemplifies the Oregon way in a time when I feel like we've lost the Oregon way. It's all of these people coming together to do what's best for Oregon without regard to political leanings or their own self-interest. We all gave up plenty of our own self-interest to make that happen. And it's really exciting. It also addresses a huge issue for down here, which is what happens to Shutter Creek Correctional Facility. Because the General Services Administration surplused Shutter Creek. There is no good use for Shutter Creek as far as I'm concerned, other than serving as the research facility for Oregon State University. And the Department of State Lands has applied for that. It would be a great research facility. It's right on the edge of the Elliott State Forest. I know people have had ideas about a homeless shelter and a drying out center and all that, but it's too isolated for that. But it would be a great research facility. It would bring over 100 people to our area, including professors and students, to work and to live in this area, and would be a great asset for our county.
What should the county do to address climate change in comprehensive land use planning, especially concerning forests and water quality and quantity?
So when we do county planning, climate change is something that we do consider and look at. For example, I just finished serving on a rural advisory committee for the Department of Land Conservation and Development Commission about roadway armoring. Historically, we haven't allowed anybody to put riprap on the Oregon coast, because when you put up riprap, all it does is deflect the water somewhere else. But we've had sections of Highway 101 wash out enough that we really have to start looking at, at least some level of shoreline armoring for that in order to protect the road. And I think if, the creators of Highway 101 had been looking at climate change, if they had been aware of that and thinking about that back when it was placed, they wouldn't have put it where it is. So it's the county's job now to be more thoughtful going forward and saying, we can't put certain things in certain places because of climate change, sea level rise, and the fact that it's not in everybody's best interest to have to rebuild things like Highway 101 at great cost to the taxpayer, because it's now in the ocean, frankly, is what we're potentially looking at some point. So we're trying to be forward thinking with the Coos County Comprehensive Land Use Plan. We're trying to look at climate change and the impacts that it will have. And some of that is just being thoughtful in the rules and the regulations that we create. And that's really where we've been putting our efforts.
How can you assure the citizens of the county that land use managerial decisions consider environmental impacts and that conflicts of interest are made public?
I think the most important thing there is to be as transparent as possible. Our planner, Joe Rolfe, knows that I carry around a notebook And if somebody talks to me about anything that we have that has an application in front of it, or if it's something that I feel like might have a pending application, I write down the date and time and who I talked to. And some of that is, as you're a commissioner for a while and you work on a few hotly contested issues, maybe one in particular, you learn that you've got to write those things down because your memory is really fresh in the moment, but it's not later. And I think some of it is just having those particularities. If I can say, I ran into Paula in the grocery store on Thursday at this time and we talked about this, knowing those particulars makes me a lot more credible when I'm declaring a conflict of interest because I'm able to give dates and times and locations. I think it's a challenge sometimes, much like being a judge, it's a challenge sometimes to understand the transparency in what's going into the decision-making process. Frequently, people want us to consider criteria that are outside of the scope of what we can consider in a land use decision. And we have really tried in the last few years to talk more, about what's going into our decision, because we understand what the criteria are. I mean, we have the staff report in front of us and we have the benefit of having all the ordinances that say, here are the things you can consider and the things that go into making your finding. And so that's where I am really trying to make an effort just to make sure that the land use process is more transparent for everybody and that people understand the issues that we can consider and the ones that we cannot.
Thank you very much for the answers to all of our questions. And you can now give us a 1-minute summary of why voters should support your candidacy. Thank you.
And again, thank you to League of Women Voters for the opportunity to talk to you a little bit tonight. I really do appreciate it. I have been a Coos County Commissioner for 10 years, and I really believe that experience matters. Frankly, as a county commissioner, there's a very steep learning curve at the beginning, and it's important to have people that realize what they're getting into when they become a commissioner and what they can do and where the scope of their authority ends. Frankly, it's not my job to tell other elected officials how to do their job. Many people think it's important for the county to tell the sheriff what to do or for the county commissioners to tell the clerk what to do. And that's not the job we're given. The job we're given is to run the budget and to make important policy decisions for the citizens of Coos County, as well as to oversee the non-elected department heads. We do have a good relationship with our other elected officials, but it's also important that they have their autonomy. Nobody wants me to tell the sheriff who to go arrest or to tell the clerk how to do her job. And I should understand that that's not part of my job. So I believe that I should be reelected because of my record, because of the work that I've done, and because the work that I still want to do. And I appreciate the consideration, and I really hope that I've earned your vote in May. Thank you.
Thank you.